Welcome message. Hello, dear listener. Before we begin, take a deep breath. What you're about to hear is not just a story, it's a journey into forgotten places, half-remembered voices, and shadows that move between the shelves. Let the world around you fade for a while. In Evershade, time runs differently. Here, the past is never truly buried. Now join me as we turn the first page of Prologue. The library was breathing. Not in the literal sense. No lungs exhaled beneath its wooden floors, but there was something alive in the creak of the stairs, in the hush of pages turning themselves, and in the distant rustle of unseen movement. It was a sound Elias had come to expect during his late hours as the sole archivist of Evershade's forgotten library. Elias Valen was a man of quiet rituals. Every morning he entered the grand double doors, brewed a cup of bitter black tea, and walked the aisles in silence, touching each shelf with reverence. His days were spent cataloging books no one borrowed, filing scrolls no one read, and preserving the voices of those long dead. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled low like distant drums, he discovered the journal. It was during the restoration of the East Wing, a section that hadn't been touched since 1904. As Elias pried loose a warped panel behind a dusty bookshelf, a brick crumbled and fell inward. Behind it, nestled between two beams, was a leather-bound book wrapped in cloth and bound with a faded ribbon. The moment his fingers touched it, something shifted. The air turned colder. The silence deepened. The lights flickered. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he took it to his desk, a great oaken thing with brass inlays, and examined it. The leather was smooth despite its age. There was no title on the cover. No markings. Nothing. Only when the storm outside reached its crescendo did Elias untie the ribbon. The first page read, "To whoever finds this, I did not die. I was forgotten." Beneath it, in a child's careful script, Elias Valen 1883. A chill ran through Elias that had nothing to do with the weather. The library exhaled, a long, slow creak, and from the farthest aisle came the soft sound of a book falling to the floor. He was no longer alone. Chapter 1: The Archivist. Elias lived alone in a small house on the edge of Evershade, a town where nothing much happened, and where the fog lingered even when the sun was high. He liked it that way. People brought noise, and Elias preferred silence. Silence had a texture, a rhythm, like the turning of old pages or the ticking of an antique clock. He had no family, no pets, and no strong attachments save for the library. It was more than a job. It was his sanctuary, his cathedral, his home in every way that mattered. The library itself was a relic from a bygone era, 3 stories tall, with stained glass windows and wrought iron balconies that no one dared step onto anymore. Moss crept up the sides of the building. Ivy wove itself around forgotten statues. The townsfolk spoke of the place with a kind of fearful respect. Children dared each other to run up the steps. Teenagers told stories of ghosts and curses. Adults simply avoided it. Elias knew better. The library wasn't haunted. It was waiting. Each day after discovering the journal, Elias read a few more pages. Elias Valen, a young girl of 13, had lived in Evershade with her father, who served as the library's first archivist. Her entries were vivid, full of wonder and melancholy. But then they changed. At first it was subtle, odd phrasing, strange metaphors. Then, entire passages began to vanish. Elias swore he'd read a segment about a secret room, only to find the page blank the next morning. One night he marked a line in pencil. The next day the line was gone, both ink and graphite erased. More disturbing still, new entries began to appear in the back of the book. They described events from Elias's own life. May 3rd. He skipped tea today. He looked tired. He dreams of crows but tells no one. Elias recoiled when he read it. That night, he had indeed dreamed of crows. Thousands of them perched silently on the library's roof. He hadn't told a soul. He considered throwing the journal away, but something compelled him to keep reading. Late one evening, as he was shelving a forgotten text on folklore, Marie appeared. "You look pale," she said, arms crossed, eyes full of concern. "Have you been sleeping?" Marie Thorne was one of the few people Elias tolerated. They had grown up in the same town, though she had left for university and only returned last year to teach literature at the local school. She was kind, sharp-witted, and entirely too observant. "I'm fine," Elias replied. She didn't believe him. "You've been coming in earlier, leaving later. What's going on?" Elias hesitated, then shook his head. "Nothing you'd believe." Marie followed him as he walked back to his desk. "Try me." He almost told her, almost handed her the journal. But something in his gut warned him. Not yet. Instead, he forced a smile. "Just old books. You know how they get under your skin." Marie studied him for a moment, then gave a tight nod. "Just don't let them get into your blood." Too late, he thought. That night, the journal's newest page read, "She will not understand. But she will follow. They always follow." Chapter 2, Ink That Bleeds. The following morning, Elias awoke with ink-stained fingers. He hadn't touched a pen in his sleep. He hadn't dreamt. At least, not that he remembered. He examined his hands under the morning light. The stains were fresh, black, and smelled faintly of something metallic. He scrubbed them raw in the sink, but the shadows of the ink remained in his skin's fine lines. At the library, the journal lay exactly where he had left it. Yet the ribbon was retied, as if it had never been opened. He unbound it again. New entries greeted him. "Ink is memory. Paper is skin. Words bleed. Do you remember yet?" Elias stared at the page. His breath caught in his throat. He flipped back through Alara's early writings. Some of the entries he remembered vividly were now different, twisted. In one, where she had once described watching her father read aloud in the whispering room, now she wrote, "He speaks to no one now. The shelves do not listen. They hunger." What did that mean? The rest of the day passed in a haze. Every corner of the library seemed darker, the dust heavier, the air thicker, and the books whispered. Only at night did Elias return to the journal, unable to resist. He sat in the center of the reading hall, under the flicker of gaslight. Another new line. "You are writing too. You just don't know it yet." He turned the page. It was blank. Then slowly, letters began to form. His own handwriting. He reads the words. He does not run. He should run. A sudden gust slammed a window open across the hall. The candlelight fluttered. And from the far back of the library, came the soft sound of a chair scraping against wood. Elias wasn't alone. Not anymore. Chapter 3, The Lost Room. The Whispering Room. The name wouldn't leave his mind. It pressed against the back of his thoughts, louder than silence, sharper than memory. Elias began his search the next morning. Not in the journal, but in the library itself. The basement archives, long sealed and flooded decades ago, were a maze of broken shelves and mildew-stained stone. But Elias knew where the plans were kept. Third floor. North wing. Oversized drawer labeled Architectural Holdings. He unrolled the oldest blueprint of the library. Yellowed, brittle parchment. And there, near the southeast quadrant, was a space between rooms that had no label. No entry. Just negative space where a room should be. A sealed chamber. He traced the lines with a trembling finger. That evening, armed with a lantern and crowbar, Elias descended into the lower stacks. Dust swirled in the light like falling ash. Cobwebs clung to his sleeves. And then a wall that sounded hollow. He struck. Once. Twice. On the third hit, stone cracked. Behind it, wood. And behind that, a narrow passage. The scent hit him first. Old ink, rotted parchment, and something else. Something sweet and spoiled. Inside, the room was circular. Floor-to-ceiling shelves carved directly into the stone. But the books were wrong. They pulsed. They were bound in strange leather. No titles. No labels. And some breathed. Elias's lantern flickered as he stepped forward. On a pedestal at the center sat another journal, identical to Alara's. He reached for it, but stopped. A whisper rippled through the chamber. "Not yours." He spun. No one was there. A shadow darted along the ceiling. And from the shelves, a dozen books fell at once, opening midair, pages fluttering like wings. He ran. Up the stairs. Into the light. Back in his study, the original journal lay open. "You found it," the new entry said. "But it found you first." Chapter 4, Binding. Elias didn't return to the whispering room for 3 days. He couldn't bring himself to descend those stairs again, not while the memory of pulsing books and falling pages still echoed in his mind. Instead, he buried himself in routine, cataloging new donations, repairing spines, pretending to Marie that everything was normal. But normal had become a foreign language. Marie noticed. Of course she did. You're quieter than usual, she said one afternoon, setting down a worn copy of Faust. And that's saying something. Elias managed a weak smile. Just tired. Nightmares. He paused. No more than usual. Marie raised an eyebrow. Want to talk about it? He shook his head. That night, when he finally opened the journal again, there were fresh words waiting. 3 days. That's how long it takes to forget. Go back, or be replaced. Elias slammed it shut. But the whisper followed him. Down every hallway. Beneath every shelf. Go back. So he did. With lantern in hand and heart pounding in his ears, Elias descended once more into the whispering room. The books were still there. Still breathing. Still watching. This time he approached the pedestal. The second journal was gone. In its place, a quill. No inkpot. Just the quill, black as coal, shimmering slightly in the lantern light. Elias reached out. The moment he touched it, pain lanced through his palm. He jerked his hand back. Blood beaded from a fresh, thin cut. It dripped onto the floor. And vanished. Then, before his eyes, a book on the lowest shelf opened. Blank pages. Slowly, words began to scrawl themselves across it in red. The binding accepts. Welcome back. Elias stumbled backward, gasping. Upstairs, hours later, he examined his hand. The cut was gone. In its place, a single ink-black line ran from his wrist to the base of his thumb. A brand. A bond. He didn't sleep that night. The journal had one more line for him before dawn. You are part of the library now. It will not let you go. Chapter 5. The Unwritten Ones. The next morning, Elias noticed something missing. Not from the journal, but from the library. An entire shelf in the genealogy wing was gone. Not empty. Gone. Where it once stood was only a clean patch of wall, dustless and pale, as if untouched by time. He stood there in silence, waiting for his mind to explain it. No one could have removed it. No staff had entered. No work orders had been filed. Then he saw the scratch. A thin black line across the floor, leading from the empty wall, and disappearing into the west corridor, toward the restricted archives. He followed it. And as he walked, the whisper returned. They are waking. The unwritten ones. The restricted archives were locked. But Elias had the master key. Inside it was colder. The air stung his throat, smelled of ink and iron. He passed shelf after shelf of forbidden texts, banned volumes, cursed codices. Then he saw them. Books that weren't there the day before. Lined up perfectly. Identical bindings. No titles. Elias reached out, and stopped. His fingers trembled. The black mark on his hand began to ache. He turned to leave, but the door was gone. In its place, a mirror. And in the reflection, he wasn't alone. A girl stood behind him, pale, with ink-stained hands and eyes that bled black. Elara, he whispered. She blinked slowly. You should not have bound yourself. He stepped back. What are they? The books. She tilted her head. They are waiting for names. For lives. For endings. Behind her, the books began to open one by one. Who writes them? Elias tried to ask, but the mirror fractured. Cracks split the glass like veins. The image blurred. And then the girl was gone. Elias staggered backward. The mirror was now a wall again. But the ache in his hand remained. Stronger now. He looked down. The black mark had spread. A second line now crawled up his wrist, pulsing with each heartbeat. The library was writing him. Chapter 6. Echoes of Elara. Elias didn't return home that night. Instead, he stayed in the library, wandering its labyrinthine corridors, waiting for answers that didn't come. The journal remained silent. The mirror in the restricted wing refused to appear again. But the whispers grew louder. At dawn, Elias sat on the floor of the reading hall, surrounded by books he hadn't selected. They had found him. Each one open to a different page, but all contained the same phrase, over and over. Elara Wren is not dead. He whispered her name into the quiet. Elara. The lights flickered. Dust swirled in a sudden draft. And then a voice. I never died, Elias. He stood. Turned. She stood at the far end of the hall. The girl from the mirror. Ink-streaked dress, bare feet. Eyes that shimmered with the weight of too many forgotten pages. Where are you? Elias asked. What are you? Elara approached slowly, not touching the floor, her presence warping the air around her. I was the first, she said. The first bound. The first forgotten. You lived in 1883. I still do. Elias's throat was dry. Why me? You opened the journal, Elara said. And you read the words. That was enough. You listened. He stepped closer. Are you trapped? I was, she whispered. But now, I'm changing. And so are you. She lifted her ink-stained hand. Elias looked down at his own. The black lines had begun to curl around his fingers like creeping vines. You must finish what I began, Elara said. I don't understand. You will. She reached into the air, and from nothing, pulled a book. Not hers. Not Elias's. A new one. Its pages were blank. For the ones who are still unwritten, she said. Then she vanished. The book fell at Elias's feet. It opened on its own. The first line wrote itself in fresh black ink. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Spoke to Shadows. Chapter 7. Names in the Dust. Elias didn't open the new book. Not yet. Instead, he carried it, careful, reverent, into the deep archives, far beneath the foundation of the main library. Few ever went there, not even the former archivists. The stone steps groaned with every footfall as if protesting his descent. He needed quiet, stillness, space to think. But the library did not offer peace. As he passed each alcove, the shadows leaned closer. Whispers curled from between the shelves like smoke. Some spoken voices he recognized. His mother, long gone. His mentor, lost to illness. Even his own voice, echoing choices he never made. He reached the central chamber, a vault of memory, and laid the book upon a pedestal covered in dust. With trembling hands he opened it. The first page now bore a title. Lives Yet to Be Remembered. Below it, a single name. Cassian Vale. Not a name Elias knew. Yet when he read it aloud, a wave of recognition passed through him. Dust stirred. A gust of unseen wind turned the pages. More names appeared, one by one, fading in from the fibers of the parchment. Iris Moore. Thaddeus Gray. Lena Wren. His breath caught. Lena, he whispered. Elara's sister? He flipped back to Elara's journal. There had never been a sister. But now there were mentions sudden and clear, in places that had been blank before. Lena always hummed to herself while we shelved the children's stories. She feared the West Wing. She said it whispered. Elias's hands shook. The books were rewriting history. Or restoring it. He stared at the name Lena Wren. His pulse quickened. Somewhere behind the walls, a door creaked open on its own. And from the corridor, slow footsteps approached. Chapter 8. The Forgotten Door. Elias turned slowly, heart pounding. The footsteps grew louder, deliberate, measured, as if each step pressed memory into the stones themselves. Then they stopped. From the shadows stepped a boy, no older than 12, dressed in faded school clothes decades out of style. His eyes were too wide, too knowing. You said my name, he whispered. Elias's mouth went dry. Cassian? The boy nodded. You brought me back. I don't understand, Elias said, stepping back. I only read it. That's all it takes. Cassian turned toward the far wall of the chamber. It was blank stone. But as the boy raised his hand, the surface shimmered, shifted, and a doorway revealed itself. Carved with glyphs and symbols Elias had only seen in the deepest corners of the forbidden texts. The Forgotten Door, Cassian said. They built it to keep the rest out. The rest? The memories too painful. The names too dangerous. Cassian looked at Elias, something ancient in his eyes. It's time you saw them. The doorway creaked open. Cold air rushed out. It carried the scent of wet parchment, candle wax, and something older. Something buried. Elias hesitated. Cassian waited. And then, Elias stepped through. Inside was a hallway, endless and dim, lined with doors. Each bore a name. Some flickered. Some were scratched out. He passed one labeled Maeve Hollow. Another, Simon Thorne. A third, nearly faded from sight, Elias Valen. His own name. He stopped. The door opened before he could reach for the handle. Inside, a room he knew. His childhood bedroom. Dusty, frozen in time. And sitting on the bed was himself. Younger. Eyes wide with fear. Clutching a book too big for his hands. The boy looked up. "Don't forget me," he said. Then everything turned to ink. Chapter 9. The Inkwell and the Key. Elias blinked, the image of his younger self dissolving like mist around the edges. The room shifted, walls bleeding shadows, and the scent of ink thickened in the air. From a small wooden desk, a single object caught his eye. An ancient inkwell, black as night, shimmering faintly with an inner light. Beside it lay a tarnished brass key. His fingers itched to reach out, but hesitation held him back. Then the whispers returned, soft, urgent. "Right. Unlock. Remember." The key felt heavy in his palm as he grasped it, the cold metal grounding him. Where did the key fit? What door would it open? And what stories awaited him on the other side? Elias knew one thing for certain. The library's secrets were far from finished with him. Elias held the brass key tightly, feeling the weight of untold stories pressing upon him. The library whispered promises, of forgotten voices, hidden truths, and undiscovered secrets. He realized that he was no longer just a keeper of books. He himself had become part of a greater story, intertwined with the past and the future. Elias's story is just one of many that remain unwritten. But as long as he holds the pen and the key, the library will never forget.